Hare Krishna. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. So we'll continue our discussion on chapter 9 of Bhagavad-gita, the most confidential knowledge. So last time we ended at verse 10 and we'll resume our discussion from verse 11. Avajananti mamura manusham tanumashatam param bhavam ajananto mama bhuta maheshwaram. Fools deride me when I descend in the human form. They do not know my transcendental nature as the Supreme Lord of all that be. So this is a new section in the chapter of 15 verses from 11 to 25 where Krishna is answering this implicit question that why do people not worship him even though he is glorified everywhere as the personality of Godhead, the one who is all powerful, all compassionate, who was created, supporting everything, maintaining everything. So Krishna has spoken with humility about his own grandeur, and the implicit question is that if you are indeed that great and compassionate and quick to reciprocate, why don't more people worship you? So in this verse, Krishna says that fools deride me when I descend in the human form. They do not know my transcendental nature as the Supreme Lord of all that be. So three points Krishna makes in this verse. One, he talks about the nature of the people who reject him. Like Krishna calls them mudha. Mudha, foolish man, fools, people lacking knowledge. He gives a clue into why they deride him, why they reject him. He says, Manushyama Ashratram, that when he takes a human-like form. Right? And the second point that he says is, they do this out of ignorance. Right? Param bhavam ajananto mamabhuta bhayeshwara. So they are ajananto, which means they are ignorant. So let's look a little bit more into this aspect of Krishna's manusham ashritam, his human-like form. So we know that when Krishna appears as Lord Vishnu, then he has a four-handed form, which is also known as manusham because of a predominance of human-like features. Other than the two extra hands, it's essentially a human-like like feature. But those who are relying on their speculative understanding, they reject it because they say that I have this form and Krishna has this form. So then what is great about God? Right? So there is the familiarity with that form. Right? They say I have it, my relatives have it, the person out on the street has it. So what is special about God if he also has the same form? So they reject the human-like form. Now, one thing, and this is more, it is said in the Bible, that God created men in his image. Right? So it is not that Krishna has a form like us. It is Krishna has created us in his form out of affection. Right? So really speaking, understanding it from the perspective of causality, we understand that it's not that God is following us and taking a form like us. It is that He has created in us in a form out of affection. It's to facilitate loving interactions. Then there are some that say this form lacks grandeur. Right? So when one looks at the form of Mahavishnu lying on the causal ocean with a Virat Roop and millions of universes coming, then they are more attracted by it. Or when they look at the Brahman, which is an all-pervading effulgent light, they are more attracted by it. But when they see a human-like form of Krishna, then they deprecate it and say, this is just an amsha of the Mahapurusha. That the grand form of Mahapurush, it expands partially into something that we can relate to, and therefore Krishna appears. This is actually quite a popular misconception, especially amongst Hindus in India. Then, what is the fallacy of this reasoning? It's based on mental speculation. That's the biggest fallacy. It is not based on scriptures. Right? So the scriptures, they clearly describe Krishna's original form, the form of his expansions. But Krishna also recognizes this. So in the Bhagavatam 10th canto, when Krishna appears from Mother Devaki, and so this is in Kamsa's prison warehouse. So he appears as the son of Vasudeva and Devaki, and initially he appears in the two-armed form. And both the parents are very much concerned that Kamsa might come and kill. And then Krishna displays his four-armed form, and they get a little pacified that this child is extraordinary. So Krishna is also aware of the fact. Now, in case of Devaki and Vasudeva, they were not ignorant of the scriptures. They were essentially bewildered by their love for the Lord. That Devaki, even after seeing Krishna's four-armed form, her Vatsalya Bhav again becomes so strong that she begins to try to hide Krishna in her clothing. So their parental affection was so strong, but amongst the others, it is essentially ignorance of the scripture, and the result of that ignorance is illusion. That not knowing what is true and what is not. There is also this notion of faulty logic. That if one establishes a logic that Lord Vishnu is greater than Lord Krishna because he has four-armed form, then the Acharyas said by that logic, Ravan should have been even greater because he had 20 arms. And Kartavirya, Arjun, the enemy of Parshuram, he had 1,000 arms. Banasur had 1,000 arms. So they should have been even greater. So simply by saying that if one has an extraordinary form, whether it be in terms of a number of arms or in terms of size, Kumbhakaran's size was such that his back would touch the clouds. So there are different entities who have had extraordinary forms. So if an extraordinary form is an index of divinity, then they should be worshipping Ravan or Kartavirya, Arjun or Kumbhakaran. But factually, that is not. And finally, there is the Mayavad conception, where they completely neglect the form of Krishna. Right? So they say that they take this form, familiarity with the form to the next level. So they don't even stop at saying that let the form be extraordinary. They say let there be no form. Because everything around us has a form. And because God has to be extraordinary, he has to be something different. So they reject the notion of him having even a form. And Mayavad, as we know, is based upon upon an infected understanding of the scriptures. So even though Krishna has a human-like form, but it is not human. Krishna's body is completely spiritual. Our body is made of the Pancha Mahabhuta, earth, water, fire, air, ether. In the Gopal Tapani Upanishad, it is Krishna's form is described as Sachidananda Rupaya Krishnaya. That offer my respect to Krishna, whose form is eternity, knowledge and bliss. Same point is made in Brahma Samhita. That Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha. That his body is Sachidananda. Vigraha means has a form. And there are several Vedic quotes from different authorized scriptures that talk about the fact that while Krishna has a form, it is not made of material elements, but it is eternal and spiritual. In our case, our body has a separate existence from our soul. In Krishna's case, it is the same. That is why, because our body is material, it changes, it deteriorates. Krishna's body is spiritual, it is avyayam. It is never changing. So, in this way, Krishna, he establishes the first reason why mudhas, why those who are ignorant will reject Krishna's form. Let's go to the next verse. Verse 12. Moghasha mogha karmano mogha jnana vichetashaha rakshasema surim chaiva prakritim mohanim shritaha. Those who are thus bewildered are attracted by demoniac and atheistic views. In that deluded condition, their hopes for liberation, their fruitive activities, and the culture of knowledge are all defeated. So the previous verse was about those who reject Krishna's form, the mudhas. This verse talks about their destination, that what happens to those who are committing the sin of rejecting Krishna's form. So Krishna in this verse talks about people who are engaged in three kinds of endeavor. He says that Mogha karmano momha jnana viche teshaha. So whether they are in the pursuit of karmano, whether they are in the pursuit of jnana, mogha jnana, or whether they are in the pursuit of liberation. So Krishna says that those who are thus bewildered are attracted by demoniac and atheistic views. In that deluded condition, their hopes for liberation, their fruitive activities, and the culture of knowledge are all defeated. So whether they are pursuing karma, jnana, or mukti, all cases their pursuit is defeated. So if they are pursuing karma, then they will not get the opulences that are promised by karma. If they are pursuing jnana, then the realizations of the self that come as a result of jnana do not appear. And if they are pursuing liberation, even if they are pursuing it through a form of bhakti, Mishra Bhakti, they will not achieve that. So the reason is vichetashaha. Vichetashaha means that they are perplexed, that they have lost their power of discrimination because of the sin of rejecting Krishna in his eternal spiritual human form. Prabhupada notes that even those who consider the Lord as impersonal, They reject the personal form of the Lord, and they also suffer the same consequence. Right? So Prabhupada says that with such a false conviction, they think that the body of any human being is now simply covered by human nature, and that as soon as one is liberated from this material body, there is no difference between God and himself. This attempt to become one with Krishna will be baffled and result in delusion. So if they do not get the results of what they are pursuing, what is it that they get? So Krishna says that taking shelter of dispositions, prakritim, without the power of discrimination. So they enter into the modes of ignorance predominated by violence. So he says Rakshasim. Or they enter into the mode of passion predominated by intense lust and pride, Asura. And thus they are qualified to live in hellish conditions. So two things are mentioned. One is that because of the sin of rejecting Krishna's form, they are unable to achieve what they have set out to achieve. And what they achieve is actually the opposite. They acquire a nature that is akin to that of the Rakshasas or the Asuras. Okay, next verse. Verse 13. Mahatmanastu mam partha devim prakritimashritah bhajantyanannaya manaso gyatva bhutadim avyayam. O son of Pratha, those who are not deluded, the great souls, are under the protection of the divine nature. They are fully engaged in devotional service because they know me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, original and inexhaustible. So the previous two verses talked about those who do not accept Krishna's form, specifically his human-like form. Now this verse talks about those who do accept. Krishna calls them Mahatmanas. So we can see Krishna's affection for these people. He says that they are great souls. And what is the result of them developing this understanding is that they are not deluded. Right? So Krishna uses the negative and the positive. Right? So he says that not only are they not deluded, they also know. Right? So he says Gyatva means that they are they know, and he also mentions that they are free of delusion. So what is it that they know? So they know Sambandha Tattva. They know their own nature, they know the nature of Krishna and the relationship between the two. So as part of the 7th and the 8th chapter, Krishna had developed the notion of Sambandha Tattva, the relationship between the Jiva and Krishna. And in the 9th chapter, Krishna, he begins to speak more about Abhiday, how to act based upon the proper understanding of this relationship. Now, the fact is that what we do is very much, or the consequences of what we do is very much determined by our conception. So the example that is given is that how a man relates to a woman depends on the nature of the relationship between the man and the woman. If the woman is the man's mother, he will relate in a different way. If she is the sister, in a different way. If she is a daughter, in a different way. If she is a wife, in a different way. So even though one might say this is a man and this is a woman, but how they will interact with one another is based on Sambandha Tattva, a clear understanding of the nature of the relationship. So if a man who begins to relate to his mother as if she is his daughter, then that relationship will not work, because the nature of the mother is one of Vatsalya, where she has a superior position and the daughter is dependent. So if the man starts telling his mother, do this, do that, and I'm instructing you to do that, it's not going to sit well. And so the abhiday, or the proper abhiday, is largely dependent on, or entirely dependent on, proper sambandha. So that is why Krishna is making this point here, that those in the previous two verses, they lacked sambandha jnana. They did not understand the nature of Krishna and the relationship. So even though they may be pursuing karma or jnana or moksha, it's all going to be futile. And this verse talks about those who actually understand the sambandha jnana. Krishna says that they are mahatmas, because they come under his internal potency. Right? He says that Daivim Prakritim Ashrita, the divine potency of Krishna. And what do they do? Bhajantya Ananya Manaso. That now this is the abhiday part. That because they are properly situated in their understanding of the relationship, they engage in exclusive devotional service. So with this realization also comes the understanding of the futility of other angas like karma, jnana and astan. There also comes the understanding of Krishna, what his position is, who he is, how does he relate to everyone and everything. One gets an understanding of the position of the Devas, Brahma, Vishnu, Brahman. One gets an understanding of the nature of Krishna's body, that it is spiritual, indestructible, Satchitanand, that he is the cause of all causes. So Srila Prabhupada in the purport writes that such a Mahatma or great soul develops through association with other Mahatma, pure devotees. Pure devotees are not even attracted by Krishna's other features such as the four-armed Mahavishnu. They are simply attracted by the two-armed form of Krishna. They are not attracted to other features of Krishna, nor are they concerned with any form of a demigod or of a human being. They meditate only upon Krishna and Krishna consciousness. Okay, let's go to the next verse. Verse 14. Satatam kirtayanto mam yatantascha dhridavrataha nabhasyantascha mam bhaktya nityayukta upasate. Always chanting my glories, endeavoring with great determination, bowing down before me, these great souls perpetually worship me with devotion. So the previous verse, it talked about the Mahatmas, those who had the proper sambandha jnana, and it was mentioned that they worship Krishna. So this verse expands upon what kind of worship they do. So it says Satatam Kirtayanto Ma. So Kirtayanta, Kirtan generally refers to Kirtan as in singing glories. Kirti means greatness. So Kirtan is glorifying the Lord. Here it is used as worship in this context, that they worship the Lord. And what is the nature of the worship? Satatam. Satatam means always. And Nitya Yukta. Nitya Yukta means perpetually engaged. So this is an important point that Krishna makes, that bhakti is not predicated on other factors. So one who is doing karma-kand cannot engage in karma-kand rituals on an ongoing basis, because it is predicated on considerations of suitable time, place, etc. For instance, right now the Pitru Paksha is going on, and for those who follow Karam-kand, a lot of auspicious activities they do not perform during Pitru Paksha. So things like mundan and marriages and yagyas, they are all put on a hold. So it cannot be satatam. It cannot be always. Cannot be nityayukta. Similarly, Gyan, it relies on other kind of purification for its execution. But the performers of bhakti, they have no such restrictions. So in the Vishnu Dharma it is said that for one eager for the name of Hari, there are no restrictions of time, place or impurity. So this worship of Krishna is their Nitya Dharma. Nitya Yukta Upasate. Upasate means worship. So they are constantly engaged in the worship of Krishna. And what is their mood? It is bhaktya. So bhaktya means with devotion. So in bhakti, more important than the performance of the rituals is the mood of the performance of those activities. So as we'll see later on when Krishna talks about Patram Pushram Phalam Toyam, that one can offer things small or big, but essentially what Krishna absorbs is the sentiment of love. Now this does not mean that devotees ignore the regulative principles of worship, because there is a science behind it. That while they are developing the sentiment of love, they take shelter of the rules and regulations. So that is why Krishna also says that Dridvrata. So Dridvrata means with determination. Now when determination is used, then it applies to practice. So what do the devotees follow with determination? Things that are favorable to their Krishna consciousness. So things like observing fast on Ekadashi and Janmashtami and other days, Dhritrata, vows that they take before the spiritual master: I must complete this number of rounds of chanting, this many obeisances, this much donation, etc. And Krishna, he uses the word, he says, yatantas cha dridvata. So cha means over here it means etc. So it's kind of a catch-all to say that there are many activities that are regulative in the performance of bhakti, and the devotees, they try to follow all of it with firm determination. Srila Prabhupada in the purport writes that these are the symptoms of a Mahatma. One cannot be rubber stamped or cannot be manufactured. So what are the symptoms? They are always engaged in the chanting of the glories of the Lord. He has no other business. He is not an impersonalist. When the question of glorification is there, one has to only glorify the Supreme Lord, praising His holy name, His eternal form, His transcendental qualities and His uncommon pastimes. One has to glorify all these things. Therefore, a Mahatma is attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then Prabhupada says that one who is attached to the impersonal feature of the Supreme Lord, the Brahma Jyotir, is not described as Mahatma in the Bhagavad-gita. He is described in a different way in the next verse. Verse 15. Jnana yagyena chapyanne yajantu mam upasate ekatvena prathatvena bahuda vishvato mukham. Others who engage in sacrifice by the cultivation of knowledge worship the Supreme Lord as the one without a second, as diverse in many and in the universal form. So the previous verses spoke about those who had proper sambandh gyan. This verse speaks about those who lack it. And because of a lack of the understanding of relationship with Krishna, they tend to perform activities that are speculative. So here Krishna essentially talks about the three kinds of endeavors by people who reject Krishna's personal form. Ekatvena, Prathatvena, and Bahuda Vishvato Mukham. So let us look into a little bit deeper into these descriptions that Krishna has given. So if you remember, in the 7th chapter, Krishna had talked about various kinds of transcendentalists. And so he had talked in the 7:16 about the 4 types of Mishra Bhaktas: Artho, Artharthi, Jnani, and Jigyasur. And then towards the end of the chapter, Krishna had spoken about 3 additional kinds of aspiring transcendentalists. So these are those who had faith but not in Krishna. So he had spoke about the Deva Bhaktas, and 7:23, calling them Alpamedesham, men of limited intelligence, and talked about the impersonalist in 7:24, calling them Abhudya, people who lacked intelligence, and Mokshakratas in 7:29, which are basically seeking liberation in the Brahman. So in this verse, Krishna is essentially speaking once again about these 3 kinds of people: Ekatvena, Prathatvena, and Bahuda Vishvato Mukham. So the Ekatvena are those who worship themselves as the Supreme Lord. So Ekatvena means they consider themselves and the Lord to be the same. Right? So they say that I am God, and God is me. So they are the lowest. They are the monist or the impersonalist, and they are infected by misunderstanding and lack of sadhana. So they are also known as Aham Graho Pasana. So Aham Graho Pasana means that they worship themselves. Upasana means worship. Aham Graho means it's directed towards themselves. The second is those who are Bahuda Prataktvena, who basically consider the Lord to have many forms. Now, factually, the Lord does have many forms. Right? He is there as Krishna and Balram and Lord Vishnu. He has millions of forms, but these practitioners, they consider any form to be that of Krishna, specifically the demigods. Right? So they consider the demigods to be forms of Krishna. So they will take a vibhuti. So a demigod is empowered with a particular vibhuti, a particular power of Krishna. Like Brahma is empowered with the creation potency. Right? Indra is empowered with the maintenance potency. So they take a particular vibhuti and they say that this is not different from the Lord. Right? So this is known as pratikopasana. So they say the sun is not different from Krishna, Indra is not different from Krishna, moon is not different from Krishna. So these are essentially the Alpamedesham, the demigod worshippers. There's a slight difference, if you'll notice, that in the 7th chapter, Krishna did not go deeply into the mood of the demigod worshippers. So they just worship demigods for material gains. Here he goes a little bit more deeper and says that why do they worship the demigods? Because they actually consider the demigods to be non-different from Krishna. And then the third is the Vishvato Mukham. So Vishvato Mukham are those who worship Krishna in the universal form, the Vishvarupa. Right? And these are the Brahmavadis. So they worship the sum total of the Vishnus. Right? So they are called Vishvarupa Upasana. So these are the highest amongst the 3. Amongst the 3, the lowest are the impersonalist, the second are the demigod worshippers, and then there is the those who worship Krishna in the impersonal form. But factually, all 3 of them, Krishna says, are deluded because they lack an understanding of his actual form. So next set of verses, we'll do verses 16 to 19, these 4 verses together. Aham kraturaham yagya swadaham aham aushadam mantram aham evajam aham agniraham hutam pitam asya jagato matadhata pitamaha vedyam pavitram omkara riksam yajurevacha gatir bharta prabhu sakshi nivasa sharanam suhurt prabhava pralaya sthanam nidanam bijam avyayam tapamya aham varsham nigranami utsrajami cha amritam chaiva mrityuscha sadachakcham arjuna. But it is I who am the ritual, I the sacrifice, the offering to the ancestors, the healing herb, the transcendental chant. I am the butter and I am the fire and the offering. I am the father of this universe, the mother, the supporter and the grandsire. I am the object of knowledge, the purifier and the syllable Om. I am also the Rig, Sam and the Yajur Vedas. I am the goal, the sustainer, the master, the witness, the abode, the refuge, and the most dear friend. I am the creation and the annihilation, the basis of everything, the resting place and the eternal seat. O Arjun, I give heat and I withhold and send forth the rain. I am immortality and I am also death personified. Both spirit and matter are in me. So in the last part of the previous verse 15, Krishna had mentioned about those who worship him as the Vishwarupa. And these 4 verses essentially present 33 items by which the worshippers of the universal form relate to Krishna. So we see that progressively Krishna is coming out from the background and presenting himself as the supreme object of worship, the object of all the Vedas. And in this set of verses he shows how he is intricately related with everything material. And it is, while the main focus of this is the Brahmavadis, it also allows for devotees to nourish their faith in Krishna. So sometimes devotees, they tend to see the material world as separate from Krishna. But actually that is not true. The only thing that makes one thing separate from Krishna is our consciousness. The Prabhupada would give this example that you can use engineering, technology for sense gratification, and then it's an object of Maya. But you can use the same mic or the dictaphone to preach or to record translation, and then it becomes spiritualized there. So also this is a way for devotees to see how Krishna can be seen in every aspect of the material existence. And as I mentioned, it is also explaining how do the Brahmavadis, how do those who worship Krishna in the universal form see him. So some of these activities are in Karma Kanda because they provide the purification needed, and some of them are in Gyan Kanda because they refine the intelligence in perceiving the impersonal aspect. So Krishna says that we'll quickly go over the 33 items. Krishna says he is Kratau, which means that he is Vedic sacrifices such as the Jyotish Toma sacrifice. He is the Yagya, which refers to the sacrifices mentioned in the Smritis. He is Swadha, which refers to the Shraddha rites that are performed to the Pitras. He is Aushad, which is medicine or food coming from herbs. He is mantra, which is chanted during offering oblations to the devas. He is ajya, which means that he is the substance that are offered during oblations, such as ghee. So you notice that these are all part of demigod worship, karma kanda. So he is Agni, that is used to perform the various kinds of homas. He is Huta, which is the act of offering oblations. Right, so this is now covering the karma kanda aspect. Now Krishna moves more into the Gyan Kanda, where he says, I am situated as the soul of all those things. I am situated as the mother, the father, the grandfather of moving and unmoving things. Right? So Krishna has established himself as the creator and the maintainer. And then he says that I am Dhata, that in the form of the king and the others, I am situated as the maintainer and the nourisher. The 12th item is Krishna says that because I am the possessor of all energies, material and spiritual, and the Paramatma within all matters and jivas, the number of living entities to maintain is not a problem for me. So effortlessly Krishna as Paramatma is maintaining the entire material and spiritual existence. Then Krishna says, I am Vedyam, that which is to be known, and I am Pavitram, that is pure and that which purifies. I am Om, the Pranav of all the Vedas, the cause of the knowledge of the Brahma. And he says, I am the three Vedas, the Rik, Sam and Yajur. And he says Cha, which indicates Athar Veda and other Angas of Vedas. Then Krishna says, I am the three types of mantras that are used in rituals. And he says, I am Gati. Gati means the method or the path by which a goal is achieved. Krishna says, I am Bharta, protector, Prabhu, controller, Sakshi, I am the seer of all sinful and pious activities. I am Nivash, the place of enjoyment or one's house. Then Sharan means one who offers protection, one who takes away the suffering. Krishna says, I am Suhurat. Suhurat means the well-wisher. I am Prabhava Pralaya Sthanam. So which means that from Krishna comes the acts of creation, destruction and maintenance. Pralaya is destruction, Sthanam is maintenance and Prabhava is creation. Then Krishna says, I am Nidanam, that I am the 9 kinds of treasures. I am Bijam, which means that he is the indestructible cause. He says, I am not perishable like rice and other material seeds. Then Krishna says, in the form of sun, I heat the universe. During the monsoon season, Krishna is Varsham. He releases the rain from the cloud. And sometimes in the form of drought, he draws back the water of the rain. Krishna says, I am Amritam. I am liberation. And I am Samsar, which means I am also death. Then 32 Krishna says, I am Sat Asat. That I am that which is gross and subtle. And finally Krishna says, I alone am all of this. I, the son of Vasudeva, one person holding all powers, am situated in the form of the whole universe with many names and forms. Now, this is obviously a representative. Krishna is everything. But he gives a sampling by which those who are attracted to the impersonal form can see Krishna around them. And for devotees, it increases their love and appreciation for Krishna. Okay, so we'll pause here and resume from the next verse in our next discussion. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Hare Krishna.